Here are my answers to the whole Socionics personality questionnaire. My name's Amanda, but I go by Lazio on Discord, or Lazarus, and I study behavioral neuroscience. I have a minor in chemistry. I was originally a biochemistry student, but I didn't enjoy the competitive atmosphere of the course insofar as it came to lab positions. What I like about it, I like how interdisciplinary behavioral neuroscience is, especially in research. You kind of are allowed to find a niche insofar as you can become you can find a niche allowing you to become an interdisciplinary specialist because it draws from other fields like chemistry, psychology, and on and on. What do I dislike about it? The amount of work sometimes, but I mostly dislike other people in my faculty. Some people, I hear them say things like, why am I here? Or, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, which is fine, but then they also talk about it being boring. And between, I think, lack of motivation to persevere through something boring and the fact that they find it uninteresting, I don't really understand why they're not doing something else, because the specialist nature of the field means that you kind of have to be self-directed and know what you're doing. For work, I work with a network which plans recreation for children with autism. So we make adaptive programming so that they can have close to a typical experience as possible in, for example, sports programs or such and such. And I really enjoy most parts of that. I enjoy specifically figuring out kind of the crux of a person's issues and then how to accommodate them. I like that we get paired with one or two individuals at a time instead of being responsible for a large group. I like that because that's the case, I have a wide network of coworkers for each group I orient. But what I dislike about it is it can sometimes be loud, can be overstimulating and disorienting. You really have to think in the moment, which I'd rather sit back and observe someone and kind of make a plan of attack and then implement it than have to be on my feet all the time, which this job requires. Question 2. What else do you do on a daily basis? Interests and hobbies. I'm really interested in calligraphy. I read and I write a lot. These are activities I can really get lost in, especially with calligraphy. The fluid movements and having that translate to like the overall beauty of the word is wonderful. Reading and writing, I find are really engaging for me, whether it's fiction, nonfiction. I can kind of find something or kind of make connections to what's already in my brain. I walk a lot. I don't know if that counts as an interest or hobby, but I enjoy listening to podcasts. It's the same thing as reading, but I don't have to kind of when I read, I try to pause for comprehension sometimes, and I don't need to do that with podcasts because I can almost treat it more like a dialogue. I really spent a lot of time simply in a process of self-improvement. So I would almost call that a hobby on its own, and it's not strictly something with tangible results, but for example, I like to kind of it's something I've been applying to my studying a lot, where I'll make a system of note-taking or like some kind of like I like trying a lot of different things in approach to note-taking, which is almost a hobby on its own. But I find I don't free time, video games sometimes, less lately. I like it best when I can have a loose structure to work off of and then fill it in as I go. And that's when I can relax the most, and that's actually when I'm most productive. So I like kind of hobbies that cultivate that and are like I'd say the common theme is I don't do a lot of like things that the time is blocked for me when I'm doing something for my individual pursuits of happiness, because I like to choose when to work and when to completely leave that alone. It's kind of a hard question to answer in depth. It's easier to just give a list. Values for question 3, on the other hand. I wrote for one of my university applications, I think my favorite kind of snapshot of my values was innovation, resilience. I think that those things are interrelated and very strongly inherent, but also there's a lot of room for development in those qualities in me. I think that resilience means you're eventually innovative, as when you're tackling a problem time and time again, or going through things time and time again, eventually you're bound to think of a new solution to issues. And I think for likewise, an innovative person would rather try different things when something's not working than give in. Not even preference, it's just more innate. But I do think these can be developed and almost must be developed for at least academic success. I think my newest kind of solid value then would be discretion. In kind of so the common definitions of the word, I guess, are being careful and selective with what you say, and then also being free to say what you wish and when you wish to. So it's not so much about who I divulge certain information to as the fact that I find discretion and its practice very freeing. I like feeling that I'm selecting my responses carefully at all moments, even choosing when to be less moderate is important to me. Other than that, I value honesty. I value all my other values aren't things that I practice as holy. I practice reflection. I practice self-knowledge. And then there's a bunch of amorphous other values that I think most people would tend to agree with or list. Relationship with family and friends. That's an interesting area for me. I have really good relationships on a surface scale. I can interact with and talk to a lot of people. The crux of an issue for me then is that I'm not given to pursue a lot of these relationships. Family's been particularly rough because of certain circumstances. I live in a foster family. In my house there are 7 other people and myself, and I'm aging out of the foster care system soon, which means that either I'll be finding my own apartment or paying rent at my current home, which is what I believe I'll be doing the latter. But the issue with that, well, I've been in the same foster home for 16 years of my life, almost 17, coming up this October. And my foster mother is 76 years old. She's almost definitely an ILI. And I resent that she treats me like an unfinished project. She doesn't spend a lot of time getting to know me, and so I'll sometimes hear her talking about me to other people in ways that diminish what I believe my ability to take care of myself and be autonomous in the world really is like. And we quite often end up butting heads where we're interested in the same thing, but I have different takes on many things, and I can be quite defensive and sharp, but then she doesn't realize that she is being quite unfair in the things she says. I hesitate to use that word. Callous would be a better word, and that's something I can be quite reactive to. The rest of my family I'm kind of at a distance to. I've been trying to be closer to them and be more present in family events and not wait for somebody to invite me to do something, but to actively pursue it myself. As otherwise, I mean, I've always thought if I don't give of myself, how are people going to get the chance to get to know me? So I'm trying to give of myself more, but it's difficult. I remember there was a case on a certain New Year's where I could hear them counting down, and I could have gone upstairs and joined them for the, when the clock struck, but I didn't, and that stays with me as something representative. As for friends, I try to keep in contact with childhood friends, but what I like about my family. I went into a lot of negatives or turbulence, but I like how I like family dinners. I like how everybody's humorous with each other and the jokes and conversations we have. A lot of politics, which I don't really partake in, but I listen to. And then a lot of family barbecues, poolside gatherings, very social, collaborative experiences. Everybody's really having fun and free to be themselves and lighthearted. As for friends, I have a lot of distant friends, but only a very few close friends. It's mostly a base group of common interests, as I found them all kind of in. There's a collegium space in my university where there's a lot of, I guess, more nerdy people, and I've found a lot of them through that. And otherwise, I've gained friends either in childhood or through mutual friends. I'm actually trying to make more connections of my own offline at the moment, but I'm not so motivated to do that. I like how witty, curious, engaged my friend group is. One of my friends got a new VR headset, and we've been playing a lot with that, but like I have a very diverse friend group, though not particularly close. I dislike sometimes that other people in my friend group can talk about common interests I haven't partaken much in or I don't know much about. And then online, I dislike how much people talk about themselves. I guess my friend group in real life can be kind of fast-paced or idle too, and I feel like I have to push to keep up, or that I'm not valued or recognized as an individual in the group. And that's kind of an interesting thing. One of my friends is an engineer, and I'm in sciences, and I take it very seriously, and it's something I'm passionate about, but I'm not given to talk about that a lot. I don't talk about my relation to the thing rather than the subject when it comes up. So a lot of my friends who aren't in university aren't very knowledgeable about science, so I don't talk with them about it a lot. And then I have an ILE friend who's in engineering, but he's really loud and he's always openly making a show of his own intelligence, which I don't mind. It's just that I remember we were talking about some joke with my IEE friend. Graham was made about lab coats and like that kind of archetype of like the absent-minded professor. And I remember that the other friend who wasn't even present at the moment, my ILE friend was, my IEE friend was like, that reminds me of our ILE. And I was like, but he's not even a scientist. Like, he never wears he doesn't own a lab coat. Which is a silly thing to get. I wasn't upset, it's just a note. Again, it relates to giving of myself, I believe. Not my own words. Something I think I heard from someone else. But something kind of core to my common issues with relationships. In friends, I look for intelligence and humor and reliability. It's very variable with friends. I can accept a lot of people, mostly just people that interest me, and who I can have a good time with. Specifically if we can talk about common interests again. But with relationships, well, I think at least being able to connect on a intellectual level is prerequisite, though I have wide margins for what I define as being intelligent. I think what's most important is that they contribute something novel or refine even critically my own worldview. Although I've never felt that somebody can show me something I haven't considered in some aspect or another myself. More so, I mean, like, I like somebody who can make things look less complicated than they are to me, or who can take all of the information that I'm giving and identify how I'm presenting it rather than just taking the information, because I'm usually structural in presentation, in that I have a lot of interrelated thoughts and tangents that are maybe seem like distraction from a core point, but are all very related to the same thing. Pardon my voice, I have a bit of a cold. But they all relate to the same thing. Like, there's always one core point I'm trying to get through. And it's never quite so black and white, but it can be pretty rigid. And when people focus more on the extraneous details than what they, like the sequential thing that they compose, it can be disappointing for me. So I'd like a romantic partner to understand that. For example, I might offhandedly mention like the way something makes me feel and a whole bunch of other information about it. And to focus on that one part would disappoint me. Because it's just like another object of the puzzle to me. And if it's venting that I'm doing, it's usually because I'm missing like a piece. Like, I can't put something down until I have that figured out. And if people are going to select like minimalize my thoughts, I want them to do it in a holistic or comprehensive way, which isn't necessary, just a perk for somebody to be able to do that. A sense of humor is good, but it's not necessarily something I seek. Understanding is good, but most of the things that I specifically feel the need to assert my individuality in are related to past trauma from my childhood, and I've said like the understanding of those is important, but if somebody's actually listening to me and what I'm saying, taking my words at face value, most of the things in that regard can be gotten from a book. And I do give people resources because I don't expect them to figure out something they don't have the experience for. I like really solid individuals. I like feeling that they're enterprising, stable, and that we can motivate and encourage each other towards whatever our goals may be. Going back to friendship. In friendship and relationships, I enjoy when somebody takes it upon themselves to anchor me to a conversation or draw me in specifically, especially if they can do this in such a subtle way as to not kind of put a spotlight on me. Conflicts. Recently encountered conflicts. Why did they happen? Which kinds seem to happen on a regular basis? So when I was traveling, I wrote out all of the answers to these questions initially, but I've expanded on it now. And the conflicts I mentioned to myself back when I first wrote about this have compounded and become more clear. The first is I don't give of myself easily, being a factor of like repeated conflicts, regular basis conflicts. But recently, there's a certain individual on a server I'm in who makes me feel threatened and defensive, in that I hesitate to speak of people in negative terms because don't want to make it seem like a one-dimensional issue, because I really want to like this person. I've tried to get along with this person, and I can respect aspects of this person. I also feel that they are someone who likes to pick fights with multiple people, and I've been reactive to that in that one typing session we had, where I will note I had the wrong idea. I've changed my mind about the person who we were typing and their type, at least slightly, but I still think my arguments for the type that they were outstanding in terms of representing their personality and who they are. I feel that the person I conflicted with was overlooking in my opinion, quite clear considerations. And it wasn't that I thought I was right. I just thought that they weren't giving things due consideration before moving on. And yet they were demanding and asserting that we look at what they were saying, and they brought up a bunch of conflicting sources as fact. And then when I know the IMEs pretty well, and I went on a little I had explained several times over what I was seeing, and this person threw up a wall and said, I don't see it, without integrating my views or seeming to listen at all. I even referred to some of the sources that they had been using to prove my point, because they asked me for sources for my information. And instead I decided, I didn't have sources written down, but I looked at the sources that they told, and I found parts that echoed what I had said from those sources, because I felt like they were only focusing on a small part of it. But the issue is that I got pretty reactive and pretty callous. I think that I almost said a few things I regretted. I particularly disliked that this person brought things to such a personal point, because what they said that really got a reaction out of me was, well, everybody who knows this person closely can see this X trait, except apparently for you. And I was close to the person in question. But that wasn't really what bothered me. It wasn't the questioning of the bond, although maybe on another level. It was that they would bring that into a session. That was, for me, completely inappropriate and unprofessional. And I can understand that they were feeling very frustrated. But this person uses anecdotal evidence a lot, but not only to portray what they see about the person, to downplay others' opinions and try to assert themselves over, which, I just said that's unprofessional. Things continued on, and I had eventually just decided to say, I think I need to go to sleep tonight. I don't think this is productive. We can continue this another time. I don't like when people, this person who I argued with has has already done things to leave a bad taste in my mouth. So I was particularly guarded, and I can be that way, so I would note it as an area of recent conflict. Other things, conflicting with my ILI foster mother quite frequently lately. She was one time of note where I think I reacted gruffly to something, but the difficulty for me is I don't necessarily realize that I'm being rough, and I'm not intending to. I figure my sentences come across distastefully, emotionally charged to this person, to my mother when I am simply asking her to look at interpersonal factors before making decisions. And she will often say, I'm not going to let you get away with X, or I'm not going to let you get away with Y, which is, I feel narrow-minded in terms of having a conversation, because I don't want to get away with anything, and I don't feel that my behavior is, she often escalates things. I'll bring up an idea for consideration, and she'll point out flaws in my communication as a rule without responding to what I'm saying. For me, I don't think a lot about the tone of the way I'm saying things, which is, I think, oh wait, back to that conflict with that person. I was trying to reconcile, and I've tried to reconcile with them a while. But they say, like, the thing about you is you think you're above everybody else, which I don't. That astounded me. And it plays into my conflict with my mom too, because she's always saying, like, you're not other-centered enough, but she doesn't mean I'm selfish. She means I don't consider schedules, I don't consider time management with other people. I think my autonomy is an issue for some people. More than that, I just react too much. But I was crying during this argument with my mother when she was kind of throwing at me, you know what, you're not other-centered enough, you're not this and that, because I really do care about these things and I'm considering them. And this is already something I know about myself. And I cried and I said, this conversation's important for me. Will you let me get a glass of water and I'll be right back? Because I didn't like how she was, like, she will, and she says it herself, like, I will just put force on you because I want to get to the bottom of it. And I was walking away to get water at that point, and she said, you're too weak to have difficult conversations, which wasn't fair to me because I was just going to get a glass of water and I had said I'd return and I fully meant to carry through with it. But what I did was I came back and I sat down on the couch and I kept talking and I kept taking it, really. She sees me as being uncooperative or dismissing the whole idea when I dismiss one part of it, and I'm not. I think it's just a tonality thing. I think I need to ask more questions during conversation with her, but a lot of it also confounds me. Like, I wouldn't never think I was above other people. I really try hard to be approachable, so these kinds of conflicts hurt me. And the fact that I'm reactive when I put under situations with a lot of pressure, since I value discretion, that it makes me feel some fair deal of annoyance with myself sometimes. I don't really hold these things from conversation to conversation. Well, and then another recent thing was with a friend was that they felt, and this came up at least twice, that they were putting more effort than I was into the relationship, which I will give credence, and I do try to consider the other person's view. Even in that typology conversation, I was like, okay, if not this type, then what type do you think? Like, do you want to ask more questions regarding to this? Because I try to look at, it's very important for me to try to end things on a good note with people. And so I find myself in a position of reconciliation, even when I'd rather, well, there's certain things that like my abusive biological mother, I didn't tell her I was never going to talk to her again, but I decided it. And I've stood up to her significantly in other ways before that, but sometimes put under deals of pressure like that, because most of my conflicts with her, I would walk away until she was done being dramatic, like physically turn and reflexively walk away. So that's a good summary of the type of conflicts I tend to have. My strengths. and my degree of acuity in self-reflection, and my ability given time to put my abstract thoughts and ideas about something into words or pictures. I really appreciate that. I appreciate my multifaceted view of problems and my ability to kind of draw something to its core issue and again reflect that through speech. My verbal talent in general is something I really appreciate myself for, or appreciate in myself, even in my poetry and writing. And then another thing I admire in myself is my ability to kind of conversationally find out what people are talking about or what they're not saying. I get paranoid if I do that too often. And then my autonomy is the last one. I feel like I can do anything if I apply myself. I'm weaker in that I don't apply myself as much as I could to things. That's one of my strengths. I'm lazy. Criticisms I face from others. Well, I went over a lot of those in my conflicts. Not other-centered enough, too reactive, too responsive, and not, well, yeah, that really hurts. I think that's about the criticisms I faced from others. My mother, when I would argue with her, when I was trying to be assertive, she would say, "You don't have a backbone enough," because, okay, this is a good representational conflict. We were at a movie theater watching Rogue One, and it was a late night show, and it was an almost empty theater. Early on in the show, she was trying to hold my hand, and I would rather watch the movie without distractions, so I held it and squeezed it for a minute and pushed it away. I've never really been fond from my biological mother, but I've often given these like signals back in order to avoid greater conflict. Like, and she was trying to talk to me during movies. Like, we sometimes do that when it's a very easy movie. Because when I visited her, I would try to do movies as much as possible so I didn't have to talk to her extensively outside of it. And so I could forgive a little bit of quiet talking during a movie. But this movie I wanted to focus on, and she was talking to me, and I rebuffed this quite reasonably. And so there was a person behind her, quite lanky, and she decided that they were pushing her chair. I see her squirming, or kicking her chair. I see her squirming, I see her like start to get physically uncomfortable, and I ignore it because I want to watch the movie. I think I mentioned something about it, but she all of a sudden turns around and lashes out at him verbally, saying, "This is a movie theater, why are you kicking my chair? Like, I have arthritis, like my back hurts." I was like, oh shh. And I looked at her, and the movie theater was empty, and I suggested she move seats if it was an issue, because I didn't think this person was doing it purposely, and I didn't think it was, I mean, she escalated it 0 to 100 without polite conduct. And she said, she had this big thing about how it was, like, he should not, there's assigned seats, and people need to respect that in movies. And oh, you remember the last time we went to a movie and it was empty and you suggested sitting in different seats and whatever, or like, remember when those people tried to take our seat and I asked them to move, like, clearly disturbed about this, and she was being loud, and other people in the movie theater were starting to look at us, and I felt viscerally uncomfortable. And so I said, yeah, but the movie theater's empty. So I tried not to pay attention to it for the rest of the movie, though I had to outright ignore her, which I didn't necessarily like doing, because she kept looking so wounded and like hurt and fearfully back, and like, oh, he is not stopping. And then she tried to, she was also saying he needs to learn not to kick seats. I don't think he was trying to do that purposefully. But afterwards she went to the manager about it, and I really balk at that. So I did that thing where I just walk away. And I was distasteful at this. But on the car ride home, I mentioned how I didn't like that you did this. I didn't feel it was a loving action. I feel like you were disrespecting me and my boundaries. And she made it an issue of me being unassertive and not saying what I want. And like, but for me, assertion is, for example, if I was in her place, like quickly and discreetly moving seats to solve the issue. And I don't, it was just distasteful. So that was her criticism of me. I don't know how valid it is given her mental state and attitude towards life, as well as as I mentioned, I have disconnected completely from her. I don't talk to her. In fact, she's done so much against my sensibilities that though I feel mercy for her plight and hope that she resolves that within herself and can learn to see, I don't really feel the need that she should realize what she's done to me. I care about that. Some people would say that I'm too reactive, and some people would say that I'm not assertive enough. I don't know about the reactive because I think it takes a lot to push me there, and I think that I always am willing to consider others' opinions, even if I'm quite clear in saying what I dislike about what they're doing. If people take that personally, when I'm not being emotionally charged, and again, I've got to work that consciousness into my tone, then that's an issue on them. What do I dislike about myself? I can be a little bit two-faced in that I can act one way to one person and another way to another, because I'm trying to reflect an understanding of the situation from their lens to them. But every situation has its facts. It's just the interpersonal areas where this can get confusing to me. I'd rather just stay kind of off that level because it can make me feel dishonest and disloyal to my friends and to people I care about. I think I'm a more ethical than moral person. So when I haven't developed a principle to guide me, I have to consider the margins in which I act. What goals, aspirations, what things do you dislike doing? What things do you enjoy more than others? I really dislike fast-paced team sports. I dislike being put on the spot, especially when people are yelling. What do I like doing more than others? Ruminating, having long, deep conversations, but with people who I find refreshing in that they don't ignore, that they're able to well, that's not such an issue. I was going to say that I like when somebody's able to be more, have a basis to work from in a conversation if they're being unrealistic and keep to that. But I don't care so much. Hypotheticals can get pretty wild with me. But I definitely like when conversations and structures build off each other. What do I enjoy doing? I like playing video games. I like researching areas of interest, and I like reading. I dislike paying attention in my classes, but I like finding a form, or I like being able to lay out notes clearly, and I've made lecture a lot more fun for myself that way by laying out principles and making I don't write notes paragraph or bullet form. I write them usually using concept maps in class, and then I'll lineate them afterwards. What do I dislike? I dislike repetitive work, but I can usually make it more interesting for myself. But I like things where I don't have to make it more interesting for myself, even though I usually will. Goals, aspirations, or plans for the future. So I have a lot that I could do. I already have job offers for outside of university, which I like going to. Which I like thinking about the fact that that's there. But I would most likely like to continue on in research, work on my relationship with my partners, especially my boyfriend right now. He's very important to me to consider. I want to get better in the short term at simply studying, doing work, and applying myself in a way with motivation. Oh, I skipped a question. Well, I'll finish this one and then go back to it. I'd like to have my own either research lab or psychiatry clinic. I think psychiatry with research would be perfect, because I can direct people in. I don't like the kind of gaps in the psychiatric diagnostic model right now. I think that with a very well integrated team of psychologists and psychiatrists to lead them, you can have more specialized attention to clients, knowing which things to keep clear and which things are a result of trauma, and finding the core issue. Having a treatment plan that's holistic for them and considered. That's my highest ambition, but I'd equally enjoy just settling down at one of the job offers I have. One of them is doing special needs tutoring and making programs for people with nonverbal learning disabilities, which I find highly appealing because you teach them about the structure of learning. I've been through similar tutoring myself, and that's how I got the job. And the way that I was taught, you individualize a program to somebody and target something in a way that should have tangible outcomes, but also can change the way they think. So what I said was, in what areas of life can you manage well on your own? In which areas would you like help? I would say that I can manage most things on my own with the impetus. I can book appointments, I can get myself places, I can study, I can motivate myself. No, I can't motivate myself. I can put work into relationships, into this and that and that, if I have the motivation. And it's not the motivation itself, it's encouragement and reason. To find reason to do things when I can be reading and learning all the while is frustrating. I also sometimes anticipate help in taking care of physical needs, like getting enough sleep, because I often deprioritize these things for myself, though I really value them. I can't do too much organization or I feel tired. Even though I have systems, implementing them can be tiring unless somebody reminds me, you set this up so you would have to do minimalistic work for yourself to keep it going. And then again, help anchoring myself to conversations and relationships. If I won the lottery and didn't have to work anymore, what would you do? I might audit a few lectures, I might try to further my field, but I'd be most likely to be like that billionaire genius in Jurassic Park who connects another team of researchers to a personal curiosity or motive, and can collaborate on that level with people. I don't think I'd do something as dumb as Jurassic Park, but for sure kind of that like having panels of geniuses come together and talk in a very lofty form, but like Socratic open panel would be amazing. I'd like to travel a lot. I fantasize often about Dario and Artie being like, come work with me and come study with me, and like having that paid for. It's a recent thing, but that would be really fun. Something like that. And then I think that I would pour a lot of myself into becoming an expert in socionics, because it seems like something that's kind of on the peripheral of my vision, where I can do it, but I don't see it as related to the fields that I aspire to in the same way. Though it's directly related to psychology, that gap is still there between the scientific formulation of it and theory. So where I learn the model, I think school and studying is, I treat it like a full-time job. Things like socionics are a distraction for me, so I probably go to what is now my distraction for my enjoyment. But I don't think I could focus only on socionics. I'd have to link it back to biopsychology and psychology in some way. And then really, really solidify it and break it down. What traits do you find endearing that others might dislike? Oh, I like when people are kind of annoying, like asking too many questions all at once without like really waiting for a response, but not in a confrontational way, in like a what, you know, all this kind of way. Like I find that really endearing, how bubbly and exuberant certain people can be about the things that I put forth. I remember in general chat a while ago, I didn't set myself up for this, but we were joking around about something or other, and like a whole bunch of people made a joke about, oh, Laz is the smartest person I know. Which I don't really care about those kinds of statements, except when somebody says, honestly, though. And like I kind of shook my head and I was like, where did that come from? But I find it really silly, and like I like when people get excited about that kind of thing. But then, things that are positive or neutral by others but tend to annoy you. People putting themselves in a leadership position without verbalizing it. Sometimes they're good and sometimes it's by competence, but I've had people kind of superimpose themselves on a group, which I don't like. I try to watch the space that I hold in a group and the talking I do in a group, because I sometimes talk too much if I'm in a group of, like, say, like academic interest, but then on a social level, that's never me, and I don't see a social conversation as something to necessarily be led, except in an energetic sense. So when people start being directed, like, we'll do this or we'll do that, it can come across a bit rashly towards me. Specifically when somebody acts one way towards me and then in a group discount me, that might be neutral towards others, because a group dynamic is different than an individual dynamic. But I feel like if you're not, I don't know why that annoys me so much. I'd have to think about that a bit more. What do I manage in beauty department? So for beautification of my environment, I make sure that there's a place for everything and everything in its place. I learned that from my ILI, and I try to uphold that. Mostly it's such things as making sure there's nothing on the floor. I've really nicely color-coded my wardrobe, and I'm careful about taking down coat hangers and like such and such. And then I have a lot of really novel and unique posters and decorations on the wall that I threw up at one point, like one burst of energy, so that now I can enjoy them and relax in them. I don't notice them that much then anymore, but like pictures of astronauts and like glow-in-the-dark stars, and I like the colors in my room to be consistent. And then other than that, it's mostly just a case of workflow and how I manage workflow. I'm not the best at beautifying my environment, but I do like a very comfortable environment, and I do what I need to do. I'm sort of, even though I have these decorations, they're mostly wall decorations. I don't like clutter on my desk. I'm very minimal. Most of the beautification is like organizing my bookshelf and such and such. And I have a lot of like bird sculptures around my room because I started collecting them, and then I had one and then people started giving them to me. A lot of what I've done, my ILI did, and then I'm just I improve upon it. I have 2 large bulletin boards, but I use those for work. But one of them is really nice. It's like big and gray, and I like it. But it's like more decluttering. Like I have pins where I hang my hair elastics. I have desks for certain things. I try to keep it simple. Like no more complicated than it needs to be. When did I feel most fulfilled? Years ago when I was in grade 1. And actually I've only been thinking about this for the past few days. I was at a summer camp with a young friend who I would suppose is ESE. And we'd go to the library every day, and he'd ask me to go out for ice cream because it was very freeform summer camp. We would do things outside of the camp, like planned activities together. It was a family camp, so both of our families were there, and we'd go to hang out in the church together, and we'd just enjoy easy days. He'd show me like secret parts of the camp. He was exuberant about getting to know me. That felt like the dog days of summer, kind of like I didn't have pressure, but we'd go to the library and we'd talk about conspiracy theories, and I'd show him my video games on my DS, and we'd relax. And I liked teaching him things because he'd always have so much to throw back at me. For every word I spoke, there was 10 more from him. But I still felt like he really listened to me. And then other things. In old server management in tipsy typology, I felt fulfilled because I felt integral to the planning, even though I was doing a lot of it behind the scenes. I used to be fairly recognized as a Socionist, and structure changes in my own lack of presence on the server meant that I was booted from a position I formerly held. It wasn't the attention I liked, but it was the equal attention. So I liked being regarded as a source of information. And now that I don't have the title, I find that like I still have the information and I've built on it, I've learned, but I'm not seen as an influence. And part of it is like I could work for that, but it's not valuable enough for me to do that. And it's not about the public of the server, it's about like the team of the server. That's not a moment of most fulfillment. How do I behave around strangers? In real life, I'm cautious. I tend to listen in and eavesdrop on a lot of conversations, especially in classes, because they're often talking about things I'm interested in. I used to pitch in, but exceedingly over time I'd find it awkward, and I find that things would sizzle out because I'd talk to people, but we'd only talk about the one area of interest, and I couldn't convey that I was interested in being friends with them. Or they put out interests that I wasn't matching because I was more interested in the topic than being friends with them. Like, around strangers, I mostly just listen. Listen and position myself to interact if I wanted to. Like,
Yes, it is.
I'm very polite, and I try to adapt to the tone that they're putting forward with differing levels of success. I feel embarrassed at how awkward I can be around strangers because I hear others getting to know each other in such an informal way, And when I do, I feel like it's so constrained compared structurally to like what I hear. I say structurally, I mean people ask questions, people make assumptions verbally and in a charged way regarding others. I'm timid. In class, in a lecture, I might put my hand up, but in a smaller group setting, unless there's something discriminately wrong, well, then I would be tempted to talk up. But I need to listen and kind of, because I make mistakes when I don't. I need to get a feel for things because I've had situations where I make mistakes when I don't. I don't react well to conflict. If I can, I will get myself out of it. If it's low level, I'll reconcile. If I feel like someone in a conflict is not being understood, I might try to bridge the gap between two people's perspectives or points of view. But I've done this less lately as I realize it's just a waste of words sometimes. If somebody's insulting or attacking me, sometimes I just, okay, I concede. And in those cases, if it's highly charged, I'll usually start crying. But I never reject all of what somebody's saying, or very rarely do I, when I feel like it's way off base the way they're insulting me. I really do try to reconcile. I'm a bit of a wimp in that sense. I mostly try to veer away from conflict, but if it's necessary, I'm comfortable. Well, I can say, okay, look, like, I feel like this is a misrepresentation, or that this is this or this or this. But then when we're talking about something, it would depend on the conversation. If it's not an interpersonal conversation and somebody's disagreeing with me, I would kind of retreat mentally and reevaluate. And then if I think it's a problem for the group or a problem that will persist, I'll say, like, okay, look, this isn't right for these reasons. Like, this is what you're doing. And it's hard to say. But I can be harsh. I can be reactive, but it takes me a lot to get there. I don't try to say that somebody's making me feel a certain way. I'll say rather that their action had this effect or that effect. I do feel stuck in a rut, and I have. Right now it's in motivating myself towards schoolwork and energy and cleaning my room and like little things like that. Usually I'll spend a while like thinking or daydreaming of a system I want to indulge in, like, or that I think would help me. And then kind of try to go somewhere calm, try to have a few off days. But mostly what I do in moments like that is I try to I try to start with something small and I'll work my way up. So instead of saying, do this project, I'll say do 5 minutes of this. And then by the time I get started, I'll usually be fine. So for me, it's finding the impetus to start. And a lot of that is about mental discipline and restraint. Because usually if I tell myself, okay, you just need to start, then I will have carry through. And then another solution is just to do a little bit at a time, because it will make me feel like completing the entire project. That's what I've found, but I get very dull mentally. I get very clouded and hazed when I'm in that kind of state, and it frustrates me. I worry about minute things in a way that's not explorative and isn't, well, that's not so much of an issue because I think myself out of a lot of problems. The issue is that the things I worry about are ultimately inconsequential, or I might focus on one small irrelevant fact, and that's a form of procrastination. Would I be interested in starting business? Yes, I was thinking of starting a typology business with Beat. I would handle finances, I would handle things like transcripts and documents and graphic representation, maybe both of our schedules, probably financial things. I might do a few videos with him, but I'd let him take the lead. I'd like to be behind the scenes in those things, and I'd have to do something independent. I think that independence is what appeals to me about starting a business. I wanted to do personality coaching or life coaching for people at my school, but there's parts of that that equally don't appeal to me because I find that it would take a lot of time, and the structure and the organization for that would be difficult to work around a school schedule. So an online platform for now would be good, but if I had my own office to do like personality coaching and consulting out of, using Socionics or some other typology as a base, I would be very interested. I have considered getting paid for making or for doing notes or cue cards for people in my class this year, for people in my classes. I don't really use cue cards for myself though, so I don't know how useful it would be for me. Dressing and managing my appearance is something I put a lot more time into lately. I went shopping recently and I tried to fulfill. So I went shopping about a year ago and I paid for a lot of high quality, kind of basic camping clothes that didn't look outdoorsy so much as they were. I just focused on the material of them, material and comfort, and a basis that would allow me to be appropriate in formal and casual situations. And then I have good shoes. On top of that, I recently looked for some more. So I walked around a mall, and I spent an hour or half an hour looking at what other people my age were wearing insofar as shoes, and remembering dances where I hadn't had shoes, because I had a few school dances this year, and my lack of shoes annoyed me. So I bought 2 pairs of shoes based on that. And then I tried to I tried to emulate that and then do it like more according to my tastes. So I got something a little bit more individual but fitting that basic style. And I think that the thing there that I've realized is people do treat you according to your appearance. I'd like to get better at makeup. I've been saying that for literal years, but I'm likely not going to spend the money on it over other things for a while until I can. And then again, it will probably be basics and then adding a few liked extras onto it. I really like comfortable clothes. I like things that I can hold and maintain a figure in, but also appear indiscreet, or like discreet and blended when I want to. I have kind of even without all the outdoor clothing, I have a style that is somewhat between outdoorish or tomboyish and ladylike that I maintain very easily. I've never learned to braid my hair, mostly because I didn't really have a maternal figure to teach me, and I'd like to learn to do that. A lot of what managing my appearance is like, I don't even have a real daily skincare regimen, but like I brush my teeth, wash my hands, this and this and this, shower very conscientiously, and I have an electric toothbrush and a water pick and an electric razor to minimize time and maximize efficiency and good feeling for those things. I've been trying to, because painting your nails is trendy, I've been trying to like take better care of that, but as you can see, I have not. So I've been, with these chipped nails, I've been thinking like you should remove the polish for a number of days now, because I've noticed people either have their nails polished or otherwise. I tend to be modest, but conscientiously, I do wear things that enhance my curves, in my opinion. But this is mostly just for people, for, I mostly just dress up, like, for my partner at this point. I think it's important to put forward an effort in looking good for someone close to you. I think going to the gym is probably the biggest thing I do to manage my appearance. I've been doing that more lately, and at leisure, and I really do enjoy it. What was I like as a child? I used to talk to strangers in shopping places and then would get lost, and I have a lot of documentation about when I was a child because I'm living in a foster family and my foster mother's an ILI who treats her kids as projects. So I have things that say, when I was 7, Amanda's greatest strength is her ability to take in and absorb vast amounts of information. Her difficulty is outputting that or sharing it with the world easily. I have things that say that she's too talkative with strangers, but she takes a long time to respond if asked a question. But there's a lot of really static things which are amazing. Apparently in daycare, I was considering other people's personalities and would be able to reflect, like, not only the what happened to my daycare teachers, but why it happened. So it was a great source of information for them. I would always have my head stuck in a book. That was the biggest thing about my childhood. I liked to read to my mom. I liked her to read to me. It was very soft. It was very interactive, but I was very clumsy, gangly, and inattentive as well. Not inattentive as distracted, but I would wander away from people in the middle of talking to me. And I am glad that I've changed that. I can hold good conversations with people. My biggest change, I put more effort into things that don't come naturally to me than I ever have. I'm also a more romantic person. I've never largely considered romance day to day, but now I still wouldn't say it's a priority in my life, to be honest, to have a partner, but I find it a source of enrichment. I'm more able to collaborate with people as well, and I can assert. I was bullied a lot when I was younger, and my LSE friend, who was friends with me from grade 1 to 5, was actually the one who had to deal with it for me, like taking it to the principal, because I just didn't care enough. Back to conflict. In managing conflict, I try to exert exactly as much force as is strictly necessary to get people to lay off my back. Do I like kids? I don't want kids at this point in my life, but that's not a consideration, as that could change later. I do like working with kids. I like how malleable they are, but not in a manipulative sense, in a curiosity sense, where I like seeing how they are shaped